Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, and we're back here on this Friday morning with a few things to talk about. One is Nebraska football's top 2026 commitment. The Huskers may need to worry about a flip there, and there's been a big rankings update, so we're going to check in on that. Some plans for the spring game, I guess, or the spring day, whatever you want to call it, have been released. So we'll talk about that, some flag football, volleyball, soccer, some different things, and Nebraska basketball. We'll touch on the Huskers, the men's team, the women's team, and everything that's happening here ahead of March Madness. So before we get into all that stuff, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And Danny, how are you doing on this Friday morning?
I'm doing good. It's a little windy here, so I'm a little chilly, but I'm doing good. Spring is coming, and daylight savings time is this weekend, so more sunlight. So I'm fired up and being busy, especially with all this Husker sports news.
Yeah, so I guess to start, there's a lot of things kind of to cover, but I think the most thing I want to cover first is CJ Bronaugh, who we talked about here recently, with Oregon getting into the mix. His ranking has gone up a lot recently, and it went up even more. 24/7 Sports did an update. First On 3 did their update, and they moved him into like the top 150. And then 24/7 Sports did an update recently, and they moved him up all the way to number 71 overall. He, according to 24/7 Sports, is the seventh ranked cornerback now in the 2026 class, the eighth best player in the state of Florida, and according to the composite rankings, he's 128th overall. So that's obviously a positive thing to see. His rankings jump up so high. But then Tom Loy had an article for 24/7 Sports where he was updating the recruitment of everybody in the top 24, the top 247, their top 247 players. And his little blurb about CJ Bronaugh, there was he said that he potentially could take visits to Penn State, to Oregon, to Texas A&M, and that Miami has also just offered. They're obviously very close. He's a Florida kid, so another program to potentially worry about. So some good things with CJ Bronaugh, that he's really improving his ranking, but also, are you worried about his commitment now that some other programs are coming after him and getting in on campus for visits? We kind of always talk about how, don't worry about a flip until some visits are happening. Well, it seems like some visits are going to happen here with CJ Bronaugh.
I mean, yeah, I think there's always a concern, especially in today's, era where, players can not only commit to teams, but also, the difficulty of retaining players. So I think, losing a player is always a concern in college football, and it's good to see CJ get the recognition for sure. And it just goes to show that this coaching staff continues to be pretty solid evaluators when it comes to diamond in the rough talent, because CJ's rankings exploded, like you mentioned, and now he's getting interest from programs like Miami, the bigger programs in the state of Florida. So I think there is reason for a little bit of concern. I would honestly kind of find it strange if other schools didn't reach out to him, because he is extremely talented. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But it's definitely noteworthy, I'd say, that some of the bigger programs are really starting to kind of close in on him.
Yeah, definitely. It's not surprising. I'm surprised he didn't have a bigger offer list to begin with. I mean, when he committed, I thought then this is going to be, or should be, a 4-star cornerback. I mean, you look at the fact that he runs the 100-meter dash in 10.3. I mean, that's pretty incredible, and he's, especially because he's 6'1" as well. So he's not like 5'10". I mean, so he's 6'1", 166 pounds, and that, I don't know how accurate that is. I mean, sometimes those weights aren't updated that much, so I'm not sure about that. But he had like 6 interceptions in 7 games. So I mean, the fact that he's got ball skills, he's got size, he's got speed. I mean, those are if you were going to take the things that you want in an NFL cornerback, that's it. So like, this guy has a bright ass future. And I think I said last week that he might end up being one of the top ranked cornerbacks in this class. And bam, there he is. He's essentially 24/7 has him in the top 10. So like, this would be a huge get for Nebraska if they can hang on to him. And the good news is that they do have him scheduled for an official visit right now. So the only official visit that CJ Bronaugh has scheduled right now is for Nebraska. So I think that that's a positive thing. The Miami worries me a little bit. The fact that Oregon just offered him and he could potentially take a visit there, because Miami and Oregon are going to play NIL game, the NIL game. Texas A&M too. I'm not saying that Nebraska can't, and they've shown that they have been able to, but that always worries me, especially for a kid who's from Florida. But Nebraska's got, obviously, Philip Simpson on this coaching staff, and they've done a nice job there. They have a lot of Florida players on this team, so hopefully they can hang on to that commitment. But yeah, I definitely a little bit worrisome, which so come kind of mixed emotions, I guess, seeing him jump up in the rankings, and it's just frustrating when Nebraska evaluates those players, and then other programs kind of try to swoop in. But it is what it is.
See, the thing about Nebraska's NIL game and everybody else's NIL game is that we're a little bit behind. I mean, Miami and Oregon have been playing the NIL game for years, and so they're a little bit more experienced at it, and they also, I think, have larger checkbooks when it comes to NIL. I mean, they know what they're doing when it comes to this, and they know. The Hurricanes have put together multiple solid recruiting classes. It hasn't shown on the field yet, but Oregon and Miami have large checkbooks and are good recruiters. So there's definitely a cause for concern when you have programs like those popping up.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing that kind of struck me, I guess, just looking, I was scrolling through the list of Tom Loy's, which I was referencing in 24/7, and I didn't see Nebraska's name mentioned very much with a lot of those players. So I mean, I don't know if that's still kind of a commentary on where Nebraska is in terms of recruiting, because it does seem like they still, they compete for a lot of guys, a lot of the elite players, but it doesn't seem like they're really a true contender. I mean, Matt Ludwig was there, and they got a crystal ball for him, and then that just fell by the wayside. Jackson Cantwell, kind of the same thing. So I mean, I like where they're going in this 2026 class, but I would like to see them get involved maybe with a few more high profile players, but maybe that's just not within their reach at this point.
I think we'll see a little bit more stuff like that this summer. I honestly do. They have a ton of visits set up for, the 2026 class and even the 2027 class. So I think you'll see their name mentioned in these types of articles more this summer.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I do like a lot of the visitors that they've got coming in this summer, but just like looking, kind of scanning through, I've got Ryan Mosley, who's a blue chipper, Deceivin Walker, Camden Jensen. This is according to the On3 rankings. Deacon Schmidt. And let's see. So, I mean, like, that's like 4. Jabari, Brady, Bronaugh. So, I mean, like, they've got like 6 blue chip guys coming in for visits. I just think they need more. I think they need to do a little bit more work in this class. They are catching up, but they just feel a little bit behind in this class compared to like some other teams. So I don't know. I think that they're doing a good job. I think that's probably also a reflection of, like Matt Rule said, they're probably only going to be taking 15 to 20 kids. I don't think they're going to be signing 25, 30 kids anymore. So that's probably another reason why the visit list maybe isn't as packed as it usually has been.
I think you're going to see a lot of transfer portal names because teams have figured out that that you can build through the transfer portal and have immediate success. And I think it goes back to what we've talked about before with developing. I mean, the development of high school kids is taking a different turn than in recent years. You don't necessarily have time to develop a kid for 3 to 4 years. You want to win, and you want to win now, and teams are doing that. So I think Matt Rule is taking more of a transfer portal approach, which, hey, if that works, then so be it.
One guy I'm keeping an eye on for official visits, Kelvin Obot. Nebraska was, I think, made his top 12 or top 10, something like that recently, but they haven't gotten an official visit from him yet. For the kid from Fruitland, Idaho, but really one of the kind of the fastest risers in this 2025 class or 2026 class, excuse me. And if you're looking at an elite tackle that Nebraska could try to get, they've missed on quite a few the past few classes, but this might be the guy in 2026. So I know Rex Waterman's out there too, but obviously I think they would like to get more than one, and that's kind of the next official visit. I'm looking. I know they got Deacon Schmidt too, and some other. Hayden Ainsworth is another guy who just reclassified offensive tackle that they're interested in. But Kelvin Obot, man, seems like a big time player that they might have a chance to actually land. Like I don't think he's ungettable.
Yeah, and he's a really, really good player. So that would be a huge get. He's talked highly about Nebraska in the past, and I do think Nebraska sits in a good spot for him, and we'll just have to see how things play out. But Kevin Obot is a name that I would definitely be watching.
All right, another football issue. We'll wrap up the recruiting part here. We do that a little earlier this week, but some spring day. I don't know about spring game plans. I guess it's sort of kind of a replacement for the Nebraska football spring game, but we knew there wasn't going to be, an 11-on-11 game. But Nebraska announced on Thursday that they're going to do what's called like Fan Day, Nebraska Fan Day. And so there's going to be a 7-on-7 football game, some skills competition, going to be kind of like the Pro Bowl. I think Ole Miss did some similar things to this last year, which is fine. I don't have a huge problem with that. The volleyball team is actually going to have a spring match, which they're allowed to do. I mean, Nebraska could actually hold a spring game. They could play if they wanted to. They could play like an FCS team or an FBS team if they want. You're allowed one spring. I think actually two. I think they could play 2 games if they wanted to in the spring. Nobody does that. Which on another point, I've said, why not play FCS teams in the spring? Why not have a one game? Go play. Have Nebraska like play Montana. Have Montana come to Nebraska for a game in the spring that doesn't count in the schedule. It can be like a true preseason game, but it could be a competitive game for both teams. You'd make money. Your players would get better. So I don't know. I've always thought that maybe that would be something that teams should start doing. But at any rate, Nebraska will be playing Kansas in volleyball. The women's soccer team will be playing Wyoming, and there'll be a little 7-on-7 football. So what do you think about this new kind of spring day Nebraska has planned?
I know it's not what a lot of fans wanted to have happen, but I don't mind it. I mean, I think it still is an opportunity for the fans to get out and see the teams and support the teams and bring the fans together. And it'll give, people a chance to see maybe some of the younger guys play in like a one-on-one type of setting. And so I know it's not, what everybody's used to, but I personally don't mind this and what they've come up with.
Yeah, I think it'll be a good idea, and I think it's going to be a chance for the volleyball team to kind of showcase itself. We know how popular that team is, and I think this is a really good idea to play like another, Power 4, Power 5, whatever you want to say it, in volleyball opponent. The fans will pack the house for that matchup, and I'm sure they'll pack the house for flag football too. So I think it's a good idea. I still like. At the end of the day, I don't necessarily think that like Nebraska is going to be safer from having their players poached because they're not having this game. Like I honestly don't think that matters to be honest. But I can understand it from an injury perspective. Like other teams are getting rid of the spring game, but I don't know. I think it's a little overthought, but at the same time, like I don't think it's a big deal. Like either way.
I mean, we lost Bly Hill last spring game and Demetrius Bell. So, I mean, injuries too, I think were a big part of this. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a big deal either way. You're seeing a bunch of teams do it now. And so it'll be interesting to see, what the future of a spring game is for college football moving forward.
Yeah, it will be interesting. I mean, I get the injury part of it, but at the same time, Michigan lost one of their best players during spring practice last year, Rod Moore. So it's like, you can suffer an injury literally, in practice. So, I mean, I get it from an injury perspective, but, the same thing could happen in the spring ball practice. I mean, somebody could tear their AC. I mean, you know what I mean? So, like, I don't know. I do get it, but honestly, I do wish that teams would just wake up and be like, hey, instead of playing these meaningless games in August, like, why don't we play a meaningless game in the spring and everybody could get better and improve? Like you could
Because a
have
meaningless game in August could be your ticket to the college football playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but
That's the whole reason why we backed out of Tennessee and why so many fans are complaining, but it's the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you still have to win your conference games. I mean, that's how you get to the playoff because, like you still have to have some quality wins. I mean, Indiana barely made it last year because they were 11-1, and it's because they just didn't have really many quality wins. Like we were one of their better wins last season. So I mean, I get the point of it, and I get the point that you're making, but I just think that teams could open up another stream of revenue if they played, play 11 games in the fall, play a game in the spring, and sell tickets to it, and I think it would be a good idea, but whatever. College football, the people who run college football don't like good ideas. So, at any rate,
I'll be interested to see where the talks for the extra playoff spot for the Big Ten and ACC go, and if that actually ends up happening. Because if the Big Ten gets another playoff spot, then it'll be interesting to see what the schedules are like.
Yeah, it will be. I mean, that is still. I think if they go that direction, I think they're going to do that stupid thing probably with the conference championships where It's like a play-in tournament type deal, where you basically have to finish in the top 6 in your conference. So I mean, at that point, the non-conference games really aren't going to matter. So it's going to be this is basically going to be based all on your Big Ten standings. Like I don't even know why they're playing non-con. Like if that's how we're going to decide this, if it's going to be okay, 4 Big Ten teams make it, and it's the top 6 teams in the Big Ten. Like why in the world would you ever play a game outside of your conference that matters? Like it just doesn't make any sense. I guess if you lost that game, you could still be considered for an at-large. Like if you're the 5th place team. And I guess in that scenario, because there would be, 2 or 3, there's not been that many at-large berths available. So, I mean, I guess it would be nice to have like a win over Tennessee on your resume if you're going up against like, a Notre Dame or somebody from the SEC for that last at-large berth. But the reality is, I mean, it's going to be tough, I think, for the Big Ten to ever get 5 teams in. I mean, that's a lot. That's in a 14-team playoff, 5 teams. So I just don't see. I think the teams that win in the conference are going to make the playoff. I mean, unless that 5th team's like Ohio State. You know what I mean? Like I just really have a hard time seeing that team really making the playoffs. So I mean, you probably are right in the sense that like if it's not a Big Ten game, like why would you schedule an SEC opponent or something? Like I just don't really see the benefit of it or the upside of it. They should probably just play like 10 Big Ten games. That's what honestly they should do. Every conference should just play 10 games, and they should have like 1 or 2 non-conference games and just quit with all these meaningless, stupid bye games. I'm just so sick of it. And I get the point of it, but there's way too many college football games that just like there's no reason to pay attention to it. Like if it's Georgia against Stetson or somebody, like yeah, maybe that team will hang around for a little while. But on an actual Saturday, like how many competitive games are we really having? And there's a lot of these games that I just feel like could go by the wayside. And I think that's what people like Nick Saban and stuff have talked about. Like let's get teams in a league, whether it's 80 teams, 60 teams, whatever, and let's have them play each other. I'm so sick of watching Alabama play Southeastern Middle Tennessee State or even Nebraska play like UTEP. Why? Like it's just, I mean, we tune in and we watch it and we see
I was
him
going to say
win.
it's easy for Nick Saban to say that now, but
Yeah,
he loves.
I mean, he was saying it. No, he was saying that when he was the head coach Alabama, he was saying that. So
he still played them, and you best believe if he wanted to change a game on the schedule, he could have gotten it done.
Well, no, I just mean like
yeah.
I mean, he was scheduling the way that everybody else was, but he was saying that those games shouldn't happen. That his point was like it should be an NFL type system, and I agree. They need to get rid of these games with, Nebraska and Ball State. Like, just get rid of that crap. Call it the preseason. Play those games in the spring, but like by the time the real season starts, like let's have real football games, like all 12 games. And I'm sorry, but Nebraska against Northern Iowa, it just is not a real football game. Like I have to get myself like psyched up for it because like, yeah, I mean, yeah, Northern Iowa maybe will win 1 out of 100 times, but like, let's get that crap off the schedule. Let's get actual real competitive games every single week. And that's what I think college football needs to do.
Although you take Northern Iowa and UTEP off the schedule last year, we don't make a bowl game. So I don't know.
Yeah, I know, but get better.
So, I mean, yeah, but you got to play the games that are on the schedule, and they won those. So, I mean, I definitely see both sides, and at the end of the day, I mean, those 2 games, for example, did help Nebraska, but I do think these out of conference games, if they're not tough games, so to speak, are a little bit meaningless.
Yeah, and then it would be it'd be different. Obviously, because you'd have a lot more teams with losing records if you were only playing within power conferences. So, I mean, you'd have.
Not to mention these schedules are a year in advance, actually.
Yeah.
That was the whole gripe about Tennessee.
Yeah, that was interesting with Tennessee. And, I don't have a problem with them canceling that game. I know a lot of people do, but whatever. I just wish that, if we're going to decide things with just Big Ten teams, like let's just play the Big Ten games and let's just go from there. And let's just really, because that's the only thing I have a problem with in this system is that, a 9-game schedule for, Penn State and for Nebraska can look very vastly different in this conference. And we saw that last season. And, Penn State and Oregon, like they were good teams, but they also had 2 of the most favorable schedules. I mean, so like that's part of the reason they made it there. Like Penn State didn't have to play a lot of the more difficult. They didn't have to play Oregon. They played Ohio State at home. They avoided Michigan. They avoided Nebraska. Like, so I feel like just the way that this system works, it almost seems like the people who put out the schedules are determining so much of what's happening, because that is such a huge factor in who goes where.
Well, I feel like a game for 2027 shouldn't be decided in 2020. I feel like future schedules too far out almost.
Yeah, I mean, with the non-conference ones, it can get a little bit complicated with all the
Yeah.
scheduling. But anyway, let's switch over to some basketball talk now. It was another tough game for the Huskers. 4 losses in a row now for the men's basketball team. Bryce Williams breaks the program record for points, but misses a free throw with 8 seconds left to give Nebraska a lead, which probably gives them the win. I mean, maybe things play out differently, if he makes that free throw. But yeah, that was a tough one. And then to get up by 5 points in overtime and lose, the officials were terrible. I mean, I don't know what else to say. The Big Ten absolutely blew this. There was just numerous calls. Ant Wright actually did a breakdown in the last 5 minutes. I think there was 16 missed calls he counted that should have gone in Nebraska's favor, but there was a few that really bothered me. One, which I thought was blatant. I don't know how the refs they just chose not to call it because they saw it. But when Andrew Morgan got the and one to essentially tie up the game, the Ohio State player slammed the ball twice right in front of the referee. That's a clear technical foul. You cannot slam the ball like that after getting called for a foul. And he did it twice. And they decided not to call the technical foul. I believe this was the same guy who blocked Connor Essegian's shot and then flexed over him, literally flexed over Connor Essegian, and no technical foul. And then Bryce Williams gets called for a flagrant one on a basketball play. I mean, that was the most egregious call I think I've ever seen in my life. Literally, I think that's one of the worst basketball calls I've ever seen. I mean, Bryce Williams made minimal contact with the guy's face. And if you go back to the last play of the first half, Bryce Williams gets hit in the face and there's no call, there's no review. And that play, I'm still that play where they gave him a flagrant one. It was Ohio State was up 2 at that point. Then they were up 6. And so you gave Ohio State 2 points and a free possession in a game that ended up going to double overtime. It's really frustrating that, the Huskers just get screwed. And I know it sounds like sour grapes, but it's true. Whether it's football or basketball, they do not get a fair shake from the officials. And I don't know what to do about it anymore. I don't know what Nebraska can do about it, but it's bullshit. And I'm so sick of it. I'm sick of getting robbed. And Bryce Williams got robbed the other night. Now, we should have made that free throw, but he got screwed by the refs. And they're the refs are the reason Nebraska is probably going to miss the NCAA tournament now. And I hate to say that. They had their moments and they could have played better, but there was just so many missed calls from those officials. And it's hard to overcome that stuff.
It is, but losing the last 3 in a row, plus losing, what was it, 6 in a row at one point, are the reason they're going to miss the NCAA tournament. I mean, let's be honest here. This team, even though several metrics say they've overachieved, they've disappointed. And, the officiating was terrible against Ohio State. There were obvious, non-calls and, missed calls. But at the end of the day, this team is the reason why they're missing the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that, but
just take care of business against Iowa and take care of business against USC, and I think you're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, probably, yeah, but at the same time, if you win that game in Columbus, I think you win Saturday in Iowa, then you're probably, Sunday against Iowa, then you're probably in a good spot.
Yeah.
So I mean, I get it. And Ohio State is going to get in because of that game. So that's the frustrating thing. But yeah, Bryce Williams missed a game-winning free throw. I mean, it's hard to rectify that. And then the other thing that drove me crazy is they get up by 5 points, and then Fred Hoiberg starts to stop calling offense with 3 minutes left in overtime. I hate when coaches do that. You do not have a big enough lead to do that, and then your offense completely shuts. They did not have a good offensive possession for the rest of that overtime.
No.
And it was I hate when coaches are oh, we're up by 5 points, let's just dribble the ball at the top of the key. No, man, you needed hoops. And then Bryce Williams has a turnover because everybody's standing around watching him because you'd have no offense being run. And it's just
everybody knows that Bryce Williams is the entire offense, and teams are planning for that now, and it's showing that we have no offense.
And then the other thing, I mean, not to belay the officials again, but Sam Hoiberg got called for some BS calls and he fouled that way too early. Same with Andrew Morgan. They just were oh, well, we'll just keep fouling guys out. I mean, just the stuff that they were getting free throws for that Nebraska was driving me absolutely bonkers. And I mean, Like, I don't know. I try not to complain about the officiating. And yes, Nebraska could have, they were up by 5. They had the free throw to win the game. They had the lead against Minnesota and they couldn't, get the stop in the last possession. So there's a lot of frustrating things. But the officiating, I guess for me, it's just the fact that it seems to happen just constantly to this team. I mean, whether it's you look at the Purdue basketball game, you look at all the stuff that happens with the football team, it's just like, why?
Purdue from 2 years ago?
Yeah, Purdue from 2
Yep.
years ago. Yep. And yeah, it's just like, I don't know how these Big Ten officials continue to it seems like, I guess I'm trying to find the right word, but it just seems like more and more bad calls happen against Nebraska than any other team. Now, probably if you went and asked other fans, they'd probably say the same things. I think everybody universally hates Big Ten officiating, but
Yeah,
there were
I
just
think
some
that's something we
really,
can all agree on. Yeah.
some really egregious calls. But at any rate, as it stands now, Iowa lost to Michigan State last night, but I don't think that matters because if they beat us, they will have the season sweep, so they'd have the same record. So I think Nebraska still needs to win on Sunday to get into the Big Ten tournament. And at the very least, I know that they'll be clinched if they can do that. And so in terms of what they would need to do to make the tournament, they have to beat Iowa. And then I think they probably need to win at least 2 games in the Big Ten tournament, maybe 3. So that means if you're in the first round game, that means reaching the semifinals. And that might be what it takes for this team to get to the NCAA tournament. So they're probably going to have to win 4 games in a row. If you win 4 games in a row from here, then you would have 21 wins, and your overall Big Ten record between the regular season and tournament would be 12-13. And in that scenario, you probably could get into the NCAA tournament.
And the 5 or 6 quad 1 wins would definitely help with that too when you're looking at resumes at that point. But yeah, no, it's going to be an uphill road for Nebraska basketball over the next couple of days. I thought they played much better against Ohio State, but I'm not sure if they can get the job done against Iowa. I think Iowa's a very good shooting team, and again, they struggle to defend from beyond the arc. So we'll see what happens, but they definitely have an uphill battle in what's been a very roller coaster season.
Yeah, it's definitely the 3-point shooting is going to be the thing, and they need to readjust their defense, like in my opinion, or at least they need to recruit better athletes, because that's been the problem this season is they just guys that were supposed to come in and be good defenders, Raleigh Wooster, Braxton May, they just haven't been. They just have not. Yeah, well, Gavin Griffiths has been a total disappointment. So, hopefully he can have some type of impact next season. But yeah, the guys that were brought in to help play defense haven't been very good at defense.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder what the transfer portal strategy is going to be for next season, because they need to hit pretty well on a lot of guys, and they have a solid kind of base with Berkey, Connor, Rink Mastis coming back. I think Rink would have made a tremendous difference on this team. But they need to make sure they fill out the rest of the roster correctly.
Yeah, I think it's they really need support from 1890. They really do. That's how they're gonna. You look at even just last year, they were in it for a lot of guys, and where they ended up going to UCLA and Michigan State. If you had William Kyle and Frankie Fiddler, that would help. That would help a lot on this roster. So
Frankly, Fiddler would have been nice.
And I think it comes down to NIL on a lot of it. And so, if you want to be a team that's in the tournament every year, if you want to compete near the top of the Big Ten, you're going to have to do what the football team did. And so I'm hoping that Troy Dannon being here for a year will help with that, and they're in a better spot for that. But yeah, that's how it works. We've talked about high school recruiting a lot, but like it's just not in the cards really for Nebraska to build a program that way, or anybody. Honestly, like it's really hard to build a program with high school recruiting, because the thing about it is like, okay, you're going to get a 5-star recruit. Well, you know what? Like in basketball, those guys aren't ready very much. Like some of them are, like the kid at Duke, like the elite ones. Yeah. But like a lot of these kids who rank like 20 to 40, like they're not ready to play college basketball. At least like, yeah, they can score and dribble and yada, 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 but they'll get lost on defense. They turn the ball over too much. And so it's like, you're actually with some of these guys, you get a 5-star recruit and it's like, okay, well, he's kind of a net negative the first year because they can't play defense. They don't shoot the ball that well. A lot of them shoot low percentages because they're used to jacking up a bunch of bad shots in their AAU team or whatever. And then, after their freshman season, they're not really ready. And then they end up going to the draft before they could even be a valuable player, which they would be their sophomore year. So it's kind of like, high school recruiting is if you can get guys that aren't like guaranteed, like they did a good job with, Nick Janowski, because he's not, like a 5-star guy and didn't really have that expectation of playing this year. And hopefully he can step in next year and play over the next few years. Like, I think that's the kind of player you need to get, but it's really hard to find the difference makers in high school recruiting, and I think Nebraska is going to have to find those guys in the portal. They did a great job with Bryce Williams. I mean, nobody else really wanted Bryce Williams. And I think, Fred's eye for talent and, his ability to, improve players as a coach, I think will help Nebraska get players. But, if you're constantly if you can only get guys from, the Missouri Valley and conference, if you're constantly rating these mid-majors for players, I just don't know that that's going to work out that great for you. And so I think that they really have to ramp up NIL and, find a few difference makers in the portal. That's the only way it's going to really matter.
Whatever the case may be, they need a point guard desperately. I don't care how they get it. Impact high school player, transporter player, but they've needed a point guard for quite a while now because Aaron Eulis is not really working out the way we thought he would initially. So I think a point guard is top on the priority list.
Yeah, Raleigh Wooster didn't work out either. I thought he was going to play a lot better, and he's been fine, but the fact that they've been shuffling lineups and all that different stuff, with Hoiberg and it's just he hasn't been. He's been a major disappointment. I think Raleigh Wooster's probably been the biggest disappointment of all the transfer portal additions, to be honest with you, because he was supposed to lock down that point guard position and was supposed to be like a plus defender and a guy that was like a playmaker, and that just hasn't. That he just hasn't lived up to that. So,
see, I would say Gavin Griffiths, because there's been more times when he's been sitting on the bench and I thought he was a student team manager than impact player. But Wooster's a close second. But for me, it's Griffiths, because he's been non-existent. I'd say probably 90% of the time.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree with that. Well, it's the portal hasn't delivered, as well. I mean, Berkey's had some good moments, but he's also been hurt. Braxton May has not been, like, apparently he just cannot score around the basket. Like, I don't know what it is with that guy.
Blows my mind because he's so tall. Yeah. I don't know. Or rebound. He struggles with rebounding sometimes too.
I mean, he had a few nice games. I mean, he had a nice game against Northwestern, but it just has
Ohio
been
State too, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, far and in between. But anyway, we'll see what happens. The women's basketball team, is rolling. They've got a couple of nice wins now. They beat Rutgers, beat Illinois on Thursday night, 17 points from Britt Prince. So they're going to the Big Ten quarterfinals. Today, I'm blanking on who they're matching up. I want to say UCLA. I want to say that's who it's going to be as the number 2 seed. Or no. I'm sure. Yeah, that would be who it's. Yeah, quarterfinals. So yeah, I would be UCLA today. So I mean, that's going to be a difficult matchup for Nebraska, obviously. But it's a great to see Amy Williams' team get a couple of wins, and against teams that are going to be. I guess Rutgers not, but Illinois was a definitely team that's in the tournament. So they've improved their seed, and I would be shocked if they didn't get like at least one of the last buys. They shouldn't be a first 4 team after winning these last couple of games.
I love Amy Williams as a coach. I really do. I feel like she's very well prepared. She, the team knows what she expects, and they're playing to how she wants them to. And I think she's a very solid coach, and I'm glad she got the extension last March. And I'm very excited to see where this team goes. And hopefully at least one Husker basketball team will be playing deep into March.
Yeah, hopefully they've got a chance, especially with the way that Alexa Markowski's playing lately. Like, she definitely doesn't want her college career to end, and Britt Prince is kind of coming on. I wish they had Natalie Potts so bad. I wish they had Natalie and Allison Wadner too, but Natalie Potts, like, I think she could have been an all Big Ten performer this year. So at any rate, I wish they were at full strength because it would have been fun to see what they could do. But it is fun to see this team, and they shoot the ball really well. I mean, Logan Nisley, Britt Prince was 3 for 3 yesterday. Markowski can hit the three. So when you can do that, man, like you got a shot. And they almost won the championship last year. So we'll see if they can pull off an upset today. Looking at some now baseball and softball stuff. It's been a fun start for the softball team. Baseball, not so much. It's been a bit of a struggle. 4-6 overall. And then, of course, got a kick in the groin this week as preseason All Big Ten pitcher in the A's, Mason McConaughey's out for the season with an arm injury. So that was a blow.
Yeah.
Looks like essentially what they're going to be doing is Tyler Horn's going to take over the number 1 spot. And then they'll have Will Walsh and Jackson Brockett, essentially. So it's going to be, kind of a, piecemeal rotation. The bullpen, is going to be, taking a hit as well. So, I mean, it's just the offense is going to have to step up, and hasn't been a strong suit yet, but they do open Big Ten play this weekend. They're 4-6, opening up against Washington in a 3-game set. It's actually going to be a doubleheader on Saturday and then the 1 game on Sunday because of weather issues. And there was the home opener against Omaha, I think this week was canceled. So this is actually the home opener for Nebraska baseball. Ty Horn will be on the mound, and hopefully they can get some positive momentum with Big Ten play starting.
Yeah, they definitely need to. I mean, the McConaughey injury is devastating for the season. This was a guy who had 92 strikeouts last year, and he struggled a little bit to begin the year, but you could tell that there were some really good things. He probably just work out and he'd be fine. So it'll be interesting to see how the rest of this rotation does. But the bats do need to get going. They've really, really kind of struggled, and that's forced the pitching to be almost spectacular at times. And it's just a tough situation. So we'll see how things go. But, I think definitely rough sledding early for Nebraska baseball on multiple fronts.
And it should be known. I mean, they did have a tough schedule. I mean, like UC Irvine was ranked, LSU was ranked, Kansas State's a pretty good team. So, it would be nice to see them start off well in the non-conference, which they haven't done the past couple of years. But they're going to have to get it done in Big Ten play. So hopefully they can start off, winning a series against Washington. That's kind of the first step. Just get a series win, get 2 out of 3, and then you can move forward from there. The softball team is 15-6. They're also making their home debut on Saturday against Northern Iowa. So nothing like not too big of an opponent there, but they've been rolling obviously behind Jordy Ball. The offense has been playing really well. So yeah, I like where the softball team's headed. Hopefully the baseball team can start getting some wins, but Northern Iowa, Northern Colorado at home. Let's see. I think that's all there. And then they're playing the same teams, looks like they're playing Northern Iowa and South Dakota State on Sunday. They'll open Big Ten play next weekend at Ohio State. So in terms of the softball update, that's where it stands.
Yeah, so softball team, I know softball team has been disappointing to some fans in some situations, but by and large, I think they're pretty steady. The baseball team still trying to find their way. So even still, I think good seasons ahead for both teams. They just need to kind of get a little bit more stabilized in some areas, but I think they'll be okay.
And it is a different league, with UCLA, especially UCLA has always been a really strong baseball team. So, it's going to be, so it's going to be a little bit different from that perspective. Winning the Big Ten is going to mean a little bit more, like it has in every sport, I guess. So, it should be a fun spring, I think, for Nebraska fans, getting to see some the Huskers at home this weekend, and we got spring football starting pretty soon. I want to say like March 25th, I think, is when spring ball.
Yeah, I asked you the other day because I wasn't sure either. You think it's March 25th?
Yeah, according to Sean Callahan, yes, March 25th is when it's starting up. So
maybe get a lot of good nuggets of information.
I think, or maybe that's a Saturday, so probably
March 25th is a Tuesday.
Oh yeah, you're right. Never mind, I've got my days mixed up. So yeah, that sounds about right. So so we'll have that coming up soon. The Huskers will be hitting the field. There's already some positive rumblings, so we'll be covering all that stuff. So make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.